Robert Gould Shaw, a young captain in the Union Army, lay in a hospital bed, his body battered from the horrors of Antietam. The year was 1863, and the Civil War raged on. As he recovered, a life-altering opportunity arose. Command of the 54th Massachusetts Volunteer Infantry, the first regiment of black soldiers raised in the North. Shaw, despite his family's abolitionist background, initially hesitated. He had witnessed the prejudice and discrimination faced by African Americans. Could he truly lead these men into a war not only against slavery, but also against the deeply ingrained racism of the era? Ultimately, Shaw accepted the promotion to colonel, embracing the historic challenge ahead. Joining Shaw were men like Cabot Forbes, a close friend and fellow idealist. Thomas Searles, a schoolteacher driven by a thirst for justice, enlisted, his resolve mirrored in the eyes of countless others. John Rawlins, a seasoned blacksmith, saw the regiment as a hammer to dismantle the chains of slavery. Jupiter Sharts, a freedman from Virginia, yearned to strike a blow against the Confederacy that had kept his people in bondage. And then, there was Tripp, a runaway slave whose quiet demeanor masked a fierce determination. Even a young drummer boy, barely a teenager, answered the call, his drumbeat a symbol of hope and defiance. These men, diverse in background but united in purpose, faced a daunting reality. The Confederacy, reeling from the Emancipation Proclamation, viewed the 54th with a mixture of fear and hatred. Jefferson Davis, the Confederate president, issued a chilling order. Any black soldier captured in a Union uniform would be returned to slavery or executed, their white officers deemed inciters of insurrection and subject to the harshest penalties. Undeterred, the men of the 54th trained relentlessly. They understood the weight of history on their shoulders. The training ground became a crucible, transforming raw recruits into a disciplined fighting force. Sergeant Major Stephen Mulcahy, a veteran drill instructor, pushed the men to their limits. They endured grueling marches under the scorching southern sun, their bodies aching, their spirits tested. Mulcahy barked orders, demanding precision and unwavering obedience. Through it all, the soldiers persevered, their determination fueled by a burning desire to prove their worth. But prejudice cast a long shadow, even in the so-called Free North. The issue of pay became a flashpoint. Black soldiers received significantly less than their white counterparts. The injustice sparked outrage within the regiment. Many threatened to lay down their arms. Shaw, outraged by this inequity, stood in solidarity with his men. He petitioned the government, his letters filled with passionate arguments for equal pay. The government's response was slow, mired in bureaucratic inertia. Meanwhile, the war raged on, and the 54th awaited their first true test of battle. They would not have to wait long. Orders arrived. They were to participate in a raid on Darien, Georgia. However, the orders included an unsettling directive: burn the town to the ground. Shaw was appalled. He saw it as an act of wanton destruction, targeting innocent civilians. He argued vehemently against it, his conscience wrestling with his duty. The order to burn Darien weighed heavily on Shaw. He knew that refusal could be construed as insubordination, jeopardizing his command and the future of the regiment. But he could not, in good conscience, unleash such destruction. He shared his misgivings with his officers, many of whom echoed his concerns. The men of the 54th had not enlisted to wage war on civilians. They were fighting for freedom, not for vengeance. However, fate intervened. Two of the regiment's white officers, Sergeants William Harker and Charles Montgomery, were captured during a reconnaissance mission. Word reached the 54th that the Confederates, enraged by the prospect of facing black soldiers, threatened to execute Harker and Montgomery if captured. The threat had the opposite of its intended effect. The men of the 54th, outraged by this blatant act of racism, rallied to their comrades' defense. The 54th saw their first taste of combat during a skirmish on James Island, South Carolina. The Confederates, fueled by racist propaganda, fought with a ferocity bordering on desperation. The 54th, despite being untested in battle, stood their ground. They fought with a courage born of conviction, repelling the Confederate assault. The battle, though a minor victory, proved that the 54th was not to be underestimated. News of the 54th's bravery at James Island spread, reaching the highest echelons of Union command. General Quincy Gilmore, commander of Union forces in South Carolina, recognized the strategic value of such a regiment. He devised a daring plan, a direct assault on Fort Wagner. a heavily fortified Confederate stronghold guarding the approaches to Charleston Harbor. Fort Wagner was a formidable obstacle. Situated on a narrow strip of land, its guns commanded a clear field of fire. Any attacking force would be exposed to withering artillery and rifle fire. Gilmore knew that a successful assault would require unwavering courage and a willingness to face almost certain death. He chose the 54th to lead the charge. On the evening of July 18, 1863, under a sky ablaze with artillery fire, the 54th prepared to advance. The air crackled with tension and anticipation. Shaw, his face illuminated by the flickering light of campfires, addressed his men. He spoke of freedom, of equality, of the opportunity to strike a blow against the heart of the Confederacy. His words resonated deeply, steeling the men's resolve for the ordeal ahead. As darkness descended, the 54th moved out, their footsteps muffled by the sand. The rhythmic boom of artillery fire provided a steady beat to their advance. Shaw, sword in hand, led from the front, his courage and inspiration to his men. The Confederate defenders, alerted to the Union advance, unleashed a torrent of fire. Cannon roared, spewing forth a deadly hail of iron. The 54th pressed forward, their ranks thinning with every step. Men fell, cut down by enemy fire, but still, they advanced. They reached the base of the fort's walls, the air thick with smoke and the stench of gunpowder. Shaw, urging his men onward, scaled the parapet, becoming a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. The battle raged for hours, a brutal struggle for every inch of ground. The 54th fought with a ferocity that surprised even the most hardened Confederate veterans. But the defenders, fighting from behind formidable fortifications, held a distinct advantage. The Union assault faltered, its momentum broken.